Good afternoon. I'd like to call to order the Plan and Zone Commission meeting of Tuesday, October 31st. Happy Halloween to everybody. No costumes. I was kind of wondering. It appears as though we have no public hearings, so we'll move into our regular meeting. Roll call, please.
Connell.
Present.
Hepner.
Here.
Ingram.
Present.
Kelling.
Here.
Lammers.
Here.
Manus.
Here.
Martinez and Metter, excuse. Quinn.
Here.
Reinhardt. Here. Tallman here. We have a quorum, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Tallman. Report of City Council activity. Thank you. Secretary's report.
Pass the report.
All in favor of the report as written?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Move on to the Comprehensive Plan Committee. I will take the liberty to read this. Case number CP 17-01, request of the City of Davenport CPED to adopt the Scott County Multi-Jurisdictional Hazard Mitigation Plan and add it as an element to the Davenport 2025 Comprehensive Plan for the city. The draft plan and the 2013 plan documents may be found at the following link. I will not read that.
That would be okay. It is the Scott County Planning / Hazard Mitigation
Sure.
section. So,
Sure.
feel free to look at the 600 pages plus for each of those documents.
I went to the link and I looked at the length of that and I thought, not today.
Well, we'll find out why it's that long here shortly. It is the Scott County Multi-Jurisdictional Hazard Mitigation Plan, and this is just the updates to the natural hazards. That's the only thing that's required by FEMA, and that's what the Scott County and bi-state chose to do. For roughly the approximately last year, off and on, we have been working on this plan. Each of the municipalities within the county, as well as the unincorporated areas, have been looking at their portions of the plan and working through some items in it. The goals of the plan start out pretty important. Protect human life and public health. Minimize the vulnerability of damage to property. Minimize damage to critical facilities, infrastructure, and community assets. That would be such things as hospitals, fire stations, elderly homes, elderly high-rises, etc. Infrastructure, our bridges, our road systems, and community assets, for instance, the library, the Figgy, those types of things. Improve communication. We let people know of these hazards. Strengthen intergovernmental cooperation.
Wayne, quick question. I assume that this is something we will be voting on?
Yes.
We need a motion then, I presume, to discuss and motion and seconding.
You could do that before or after, but if you want to make a motion now, yes.
Well, I didn't know if we
Yes.
needed it before or after, so I just was looking for a little clarification.
You could do it now.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we accept staff's recommendation for approval.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded for case number CP 17-01.
Okay.
Thanks, Wayne.
You're-
Sorry to
that's
interrupt.
fine. I didn't even think of that either. From goals, we move to objectives. These are the objectives. Preventive measures. I'm not going to read everything underneath it, but those would be like our ordinances that required certain development in the floodplains to do various things, or the international code, which takes a look at tornado hazards and how to strengthen structures to prevent damage. Property protection, that would also be some of that, but that's also our flood buyout program, where we buy floodplain damaged property or property in the floodplain and remove it, and we now have that as open space. Public health and awareness, or public education, that is our outreach efforts. Usually the third quarter, you'll receive your sewer bill, and part of that has floodplain information in it. That's one of the things we do. Natural resource protection, that would be restoring a stream back into how it's supposed to function, or to restore a wetland. And a lot of that has been occurring with Nahant Marsh down in the southwest portion of the city. Structural projects, think of the Iowa American Flood Wall. And emergency services, our hazmat program, police and fire, how they respond, and the training activities that they go through. And we say it's many municipalities. Here's just a list of the jurisdictions that are partaking of this plan. It also includes the school districts as well as Eastern Iowa Community College District. There's hazard scoring. We list our hazards and then we score those hazards. Basically, we look at the probability of it occurring, probability of a flood versus, let's say, the probability of a tornado, those types of things. We look at each individual hazard, and then those are scored both in probability, magnitude, or severity. And with the magnitude and severity, we are basically looking at, and I don't want to belabor this, how many injuries do you think are going to have, or fatalities, personal property damage? So something that would be, a flash flood along Duck Creek like we had in 1990, that affects a large segment of property. Some of the high winds that we've had, they don't affect as many properties. So it's kind of those, how do we see the damage occurring? How do we expect the damage to occur, the potential for that? Warning time, Mississippi River flood, we could have 3-4 weeks before we know this flood is coming. We have a lot of time to prepare. Tornado, you may have 6 hours, you may have less. So we don't know. Those are some of the ways we score that warning time. Duration, basically the duration looks at the event, the cleanup, and the overall recovery. So those are how we score those. And these are the hazard rankings that come from those scores. They're also weighted by jurisdiction. In other words, each of the jurisdictions within the county scores them, and those are how they come out with just the cities and towns scoring them. And then they're weighted by population. Obviously, Davenport's the big city on the block next to unincorporated Scott County. So they're slightly different weightings that we look at when we do these things. But that just kind of leads to then the actions. These are the actions which various departments have looked at throughout the city and said, yes, these are some of the things that we want to do to help protect us from those hazards, to help prevent some of those hazards. So we kind of use those weightings to look at what is more important here. Where do we want to spend our money? Where can we get the most out of the money that we do spend? And there are 24 separate action items listed here. And they have been reworded, looked at since we started doing the plan in 2003 for the city, 2007, the pre-disaster mitigation plan for the city, and then the 2008 Scott County plan, which we adopted as part of our comprehensive plan in 2014. So having said that, the adopted disaster mitigation plans required for Davenport. We need that to receive any federal grants. So hazard mitigation grants, federal mitigation grants, preventive mitigation grants. It's the first step to integrate these hazards into a full range of community planning topics. So when we take a look at the comprehensive plan, when we say, okay, does it meet the comprehensive plan? If it's in this area and it's potentially subject to a hazard like a floodplain, how are we meeting that requirement? And then as an element, the plan becomes the basis for a more comprehensive future to the city. We look at future plans and how we can improve on those. So with that in mind, staff does recommend that we adopt the plan and place it as an element of the comprehensive plan.
Thank you, Wayne. It appears as though my screen is set up for the Zoning Board of Adjustment. Commissioner Lammers.
I just am curious. When I read the first part of the report that was sent. And there is a comprehensive section that has titles and items on the left. Then it says reviewed, yes or no, and they were all yes. But then there was a second column, and I can't remember if they said implemented or something like that, but there were a number of no's in that column. Can you explain to me what I was looking at and why there was more no's than yeses in terms of them being put into place?
Well, I think what you're referring to, and see if I can find it quickly.
And I'm sorry I didn't bring my...
No, that's okay. There's a series of, not elements, but a series of documents that we need to, that we send for the consultant, basically by state in this case, and the county to review. And as part of that review, they say, do we have these? Yes, 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 yes. Have they been reviewed and incorporated into this document? Not all of them really should be incorporated into the document, and that's why you get a lot of no's.
Okay. I just didn't know if that played a major impact on the final product.
No.
Okay,
No, it
thank
does
you.
Any additional questions? Commissioner Manus.
I'm assuming, Wayne, that this is going to be adopted by all the jurisdictions that you presented us in the beginning. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. And has that happened or in process?
It's in process.
Okay. I am wondering if these are all natural type disasters that you're dealing with. Are you addressing anything such as a major chemical spill or, some sort of explosion like we've seen in other parts of the country?
Good question. That's why I also directed you to look at the 2013 plan, because that did the whole range of hazards, both man-made, which you would be talking about, and the natural hazards. In this case, the amount of the grant that was received didn't allow for the full review of every hazard. However, typically the man-made hazards don't change that much. That by state and the county feel confident that we can move forward with that. Also, FEMA only requires the natural hazards review.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any additional questions? Seeing none. Roll call, please.
Connell,
Yes.
Hepner,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
Lammers,
Yes.
Manus,
Yes.
Quinn,
Yes.
Reinhardt,
Yes.
Tallman, yes. Motion carries.
Thank you, Commissioner Tallman. That would conclude the Comprehensive Plan Committee agenda. Zoning, it appears as though all we have is the Palmer project. There is no subdivision activity tonight, which would bring us to our future business for our next meeting 2 weeks out. That would open it up to communication.
Well, there is another business item.
Oh.
As per your request from the last meeting, and we knew we were going to have a light agenda, but and it shouldn't be too scary or long, but Wayne will kind of bring us up to date with what's happening in the development world.
Yeah, there were more slides in the last one than are here. This is just kind of a review of what we do with our development reports. Chapter 2.64, which deals with the Plan and Zoning Commission. In June of each year, the Commission shall make a report to the Mayor and City Council of its proceedings and progress for its work during the preceding fiscal year. In the past, we've primarily just done calendar year because it was easier, but now we've been doing both a fiscal year and a calendar year. And then as part of that, just to make my life a little bit easier, I do a quarterly report, because then it's simple to do it at the end of the year, just add them up. Quarterly report, usually that's more detailed, like the one you just received. It lists each case, monthly totals, individual cases are listed, as I said, and no analysis is really done. Here's just the information that's happened in the past 3 months. That's come before the Commission. Also, what's come before are other boards and commissions: Zoning Board of Adjustment, Historic Preservation Commission, Design Review. And I'll usually throw in building permits, what's been happening out there. Yearly reports, well, they're going to show a little less detail. We look at the total cases, except in the case of the Plan and Zoning Commission. I'll still list those cases because those are of interest to you. Maps that will show where the various developments occurred. Charts will be showing multi-year trends, usually a 5-year block of time, some cases a little bit more. And then some limited analysis, such as vacant lot availability. We look at the subdivisions that have been approved, the years that they were platted, how many lots were platted, and how many building permits have been issued within that subdivision over various time. Also been listing kind of the subdivisions with the most development, and then showing where those are. Changes in area zones, so how many rezonings that come through, how many acres have changed over time. We've kept that, I want to say, at least since 1990, and it might go precede that, though reports before then were kind of sketchy. And then housing, new construction value, we do a lot with housing, though you don't always see that. And then something that we could start doing, and maybe we're getting some questions being asked of our whole department, so we're going to be looking at some building permits versus occupancy permits. When the census comes out, they typically say, okay, you know, we get a number, we say we don't like that number, you know, we think it's different. We give them building permit information. They say, no, there's usually a discrepancy between building permits and occupancy permits. And over the past 10 years, we found that there's about a 7% difference. More building permits get issued. Some of those don't get built. Occupancy permits are issued, and that's the best way to track new housing. Residential demolitions versus new construction, where those are occurring by census tract. That comes into play when we start looking at low mod income areas. New construction values by location. Okay, everybody has the idea that our northeast area is the one that's getting all the building permits. Well, that's not quite true. And some of the more expensive ones are actually to the west and to the north. Though on average, I would say the northeast probably gets more. New construction square footage by location, size of housing. Big thing that's been in the news the past several years has been the small housing idea. Well, not too many houses are built that are below 2,000 square feet. They're usually larger than that, or I should say 1,500 square feet. A lot of them are larger than that. And then mapping the location and extent of those zoning changes. We haven't really been keeping track of that as well as we should be, but that would be an interesting thing, especially when it comes to land use maps and land use changes in the area, to see where those zonings have been occurring and how those zonings affect the development patterns. So those are some things that we may be doing in the near future. And then just a couple of examples of what comes out in those reports. This is the value of development within a subdivision by year, and that's kind of what I related to just a little bit earlier. We've been keeping track of this since at least 1990, so that we have the year of the subdivision, the lots that have been platted during that year, and then the permits that have been issued during that year, and how much value those permits have added. So this is in millions of dollars down below, so we're looking at in the permit value for the entire 30-some years, 36 years, or 26 years, I guess. $1,156,000,000 worth of development. That's quite a bit. And then where that development occurs is something else we kind of keep track of as well. This is the average single-family size. We have a low in 2016 last year of a 794 square foot house. But then we also had the high for that year of 4,300, but yet you look the year before, we had a 6,500 square foot house. And then we kind of look at that trend as to, are our housing, is that getting larger, or is it somewhat staying the same? And for a while it got a little bit larger, but now it's kind of creeping back just a little bit. that obviously is some influence by the economy, et cetera. So that's kind of the stuff that we do with the development reports.
A lot of information in that. Staff or commissioners have any questions? Scott?
Wayne, not a question, just simply to tell you, I look forward to getting this report as a realtor. I mean, it's very useful information, and I appreciate it. I like what I see there. It's hard to, as an individual citizen or a realtor, to remember these things because we see them piecemeal, but to have it all put together in a report, I think is very useful. So thanks for doing that.
Yeah, there are, I know of at least one realty company that does kind of a quarterly type report, though it's usually behind the times a little bit. And they have a lot of good value information in it if you want to compare the region especially.
I would agree. There was a lot of good information in there. I appreciate that report. Commissioners, any additional statements or questions? Seeing none, thank you, Wayne. Okay.
I don't know how to read the definition of historic as it's being used. It says East 2nd Street to allow a historic exemption. Am I to read that like a once in a lifetime or literally historic because of its age?
There is a specific definition. Yeah, there is a specific definition within the FEMA codes as well as our ordinance as to what a historic structure is. And if they qualify for that, they can request this exemption. Okay, now I do have to say I was just in contact less than an hour ago with the the NFIP representative from the state of Iowa, and that's the National Flood Insurance Program, I'm sorry. And the way our ordinance is worded, we may or may not be requiring this variance. So I have to talk with him a little bit more on this. Yeah, the whole idea there is that, you know, if you've got a historic structure, you don't want to do something that's going to jeopardize its standing as a historic structure. And by requiring certain, using double language here, by requiring them to meet certain mitigation actions may jeopardize that historic standing, because you may have to put in a certain type of window that the State Historic Preservation Office says, no, you can't do that. So that could jeopardize their standing that way.
Any additional questions or comments? Seeing none, thank you, Wayne. I see nothing else in front of us. No additional comments by anybody? In that case?
Move to adjourn.
All in favor of adjournment? Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned. Please have a spooky evening.